I'm Gregory Ashford, 38, and for 18 months, I watched my life fall apart from behind bars, or so everyone thought. The woman I'd loved for 12 years moved on faster than I ever thought possible. Celeste filed for divorce, sold our house, and 3 weeks ago, sent me a wedding invitation. Her invitation to marry my old business partner, the man who had ruined everything we'd built together. But here's what she didn't know. I wasn't really in prison. I was in witness protection, helping the FBI catch the real criminals, including the ones who had set me up. And today, as I stood in the back of that church watching her say, "I do," to the man who had caused my downfall, I knew the truth was about to destroy more than just her perfect wedding day. If you've ever wondered how far someone will go to steal the life you built, like and subscribe for stories of betrayal, truth, and the justice that follows. But let me take you back to when everything was perfect. 3 years ago, Celeste and I had it all. We lived in a beautiful colonial house on Maple Street, the kind with white shutters and a wraparound porch where we'd drink coffee every Sunday morning. I can still remember the way she'd curl up against me, her dark hair catching the morning light as we planned our future. Our consulting firm, Ashford and Associates, was thriving. What started as my solo venture had grown into something incredible when I brought in my college friend as a partner. The business partnership agreement we'd signed felt like a formality back then, just two friends making their shared success official. We specialized in financial restructuring for small businesses, and our client list was growing every month. Celeste managed our marketing and client relations with a natural charm that made everyone love working with us. She had this way of making stressed business owners feel heard and understood. "You two are magic together," she'd tell us after particularly successful client meetings. "You balance each other perfectly." My partner was brilliant with numbers, I'll give him that. He could spot inefficiencies in a company's structure that I'd miss, and his presentations to clients were always polished and convincing. We complemented each other well, or so I thought. I handled the big picture strategy while he dove deep into the financial details. "We're going to be millionaires by 40, Celeste would joke, but there was truth in it. Our combined income was already well into six figures, and we were saving aggressively. We talked about buying a bigger house, maybe starting a family soon. Everything felt possible. I remember the night we celebrated our biggest contract yet, a major retail chain that needed complete financial restructuring. The three of us went out to dinner at the fanciest restaurant in town. My partner raised his glass in a toast to partnership, friendship, and building something that will last forever. If only I'd noticed the way his eyes lingered on Celeste that night, or how he always found reasons to text her when I wasn't around. If only I'd seen the ambition burning behind his friendly smile, the way he'd started asking more questions about our client accounts and company structure. But I was happy, maybe too happy to see what was coming. I trusted him completely. After all, we'd built this success together. The night that changed everything started like any other Tuesday. Celeste was making her famous lasagna, and I was reviewing client files in my home office when the doorbell rang. It was 8:47 p.m. I remember because I glanced at my watch, wondering who would visit so late. Through the window, I saw two people in dark suits standing on our porch. My stomach dropped even before Celeste called out, "Gregory, there are some people here to see you." "Gregory Ashford." The woman flashed her badge. "I'm Agent Morrison, FBI. We need to talk." Celeste's face went white. "FBI? What's this about?" "Sir, you're under arrest for embezzlement, wire fraud, and money laundering," Agent Morrison continued, her voice steady and professional. "You have the right to remain silent." The words hit me like a punch to the chest. There has to be some mistake. I haven't done anything wrong. That's when Agent Morrison handed me a thick manila folder. "These are copies of the evidence we've collected. Falsified financial records from your company showing systematic theft from client accounts over the past 8 months. My hands shook as I opened the folder. The documents looked official, bearing my signature on transaction authorizations I'd never seen before. Bank transfers totaling over $800,000, all apparently approved by me, all going to offshore accounts I'd never heard of. "This isn't possible," I whispered, staring at what appeared to be my own handwriting. "I didn't sign these. I didn't authorize any of these transfers." "The evidence suggests otherwise, Mr. Ashford," the mail agent said. "Your business partner contacted us when he discovered the discrepancies during a routine audit. He's been cooperating fully with our investigation. My partner. My stomach twisted as the pieces started forming a horrible picture. Where is he now? He's at the office, helping us secure additional evidence. He was quite shocked to discover what you'd been doing behind his back. Celeste was crying now, her hands covering her mouth. Gregory, tell me this isn't real. Tell me you didn't. I didn't, I said firmly, looking into her eyes. Celeste, you know me. You know I would never steal from anyone. But doubt flickered across her face as she looked at the documents spread across our kitchen table. Account numbers, transaction dates, signatures that looked exactly like mine. The evidence was devastating, and even I couldn't explain how my signature appeared on papers I'd never seen. The handwriting analysis came back as a match. Agent Morrison said, almost gently, I'm sorry, but we have to take you in. As they put the handcuffs on, I caught Celeste's expression, a mixture of horror, confusion, and something that broke my heart even more, doubt. In that moment, watching the woman I loved question everything she thought she knew about me, I realized that whoever had done this hadn't just stolen money. They'd stolen my entire life. The county jail was everything you'd expect: cold concrete, fluorescent lights that never turned off, and the constant sound of metal doors slamming shut. But the worst part wasn't the physical discomfort. It was the phone calls. For the first 2 weeks, Celeste called every day during visiting hours. Her voice was strained, confused, but she was trying to be supportive. I hired the best lawyer I could find. She'd tell me through the scratchy phone connection, "We're going to fight this. How's the business?" I'd ask, though I already feared the answer. "He's handling everything. The clients are scared, Gregory. Some are already jumping ship. He's working around the clock, trying to save what we built." My partner. Even from jail, I could see his strategy playing out perfectly. Position himself as the hero saving the company from my supposed crimes. Be there for Celeste in her time of need. Slowly become indispensable to both the business and my wife. By week 3, Celeste's calls came every other day. By the second month, twice a week. The jail phone log would later show the pattern: a steady decline from daily contact to sporadic conversations filled with long, awkward silences. "He thinks it might be better if I take some space," she told me during one particularly painful call. "The lawyer says it could hurt the case if I'm seen as too supportive of someone the FBI has this much evidence against." Celeste, you know me. In 12 years together, have I ever lied to you about anything important? The pause before her answer was devastating. "I thought I knew you. But these documents, Gregory, they have your signature. The FBI has security footage of you at the bank." How do I explain that? Security footage I'd never seen, showing me making deposits I'd never made. The setup was more thorough than I'd imagined. Whoever was behind this had thought of everything. My partner visited once, in week 4. He sat across from me in the visiting room, his face the perfect picture of confused betrayal. "I had to turn over the evidence, Gregory. When I found those transactions during the quarterly review, I didn't have a choice." "You know I didn't do this," I said, studying his face for any crack in the performance. "I want to believe that, I really do. But the evidence, forget the evidence for a second. Look me in the eye and tell me you believe I'm capable of stealing from our clients." He met my gaze steadily. "I don't know what to believe anymore." That was the last time he visited. But according to Celeste, he was at our house constantly, helping with legal documents, managing the business crisis, being the supportive friend she needed while her husband sat in jail. By month 4, Celeste's calls had dropped to once a week. By month 6, every 2 weeks. Each conversation was shorter, more distant. I was losing her, piece by piece, phone call by phone call, and there wasn't a damn thing I could do about it. 4 months into my nightmare, Agent Morrison returned. But this time, she came alone and asked to speak privately with my lawyer present. Something in her demeanor was different, less accusatory, more cautious. "Mr. Ashford, what I'm about to tell you cannot leave this room," she began, sliding her FBI badge and a thick case file across the metal table. "We believe you were set up." The words hit me like a physical blow. "What?" "We've been investigating a larger criminal network for the past 2 years. Money laundering, fraud, racketeering, a sophisticated operation that's been using legitimate businesses as fronts. Your company fits the profile perfectly." My lawyer leaned forward. "Are you saying my client is innocent?" "We're saying the evidence against him was manufactured." The signatures were forged using advanced techniques, the bank records were falsified, and the security footage was digitally altered. Whoever did this had serious resources and technical expertise. I felt like I couldn't breathe. My partner, Agent Morrison, nodded grimly. We believe he's been working with this criminal organization for at least a year, possibly longer. Your company was the perfect cover, legitimate business, good reputation, access to client funds. You were the ideal fall guy. But why frame me? Why not just steal the money quietly? Because a scandal like this serves multiple purposes. It destroys your credibility, it positions him as the innocent victim, and it gives him complete control of your business and assets. Plus, it removes you as a potential witness to his real activities. The case file contains surveillance photos of my partner meeting with known criminals, financial records showing suspicious transactions from accounts I'd never seen, and evidence of a money laundering operation that had been using our company as a front for months. How long have you known? I asked. We started suspecting something was wrong about 6 weeks after your arrest. The evidence against you was almost too perfect, every detail tied up in a neat bow. Real criminals are usually sloppier. My hands were shaking as I processed this information. So you're going to arrest him? Clear my name. Agent Morrison exchanged a look with my lawyer. It's not that simple. He's just one piece of a much larger puzzle. We need to catch the entire network, and that means we need his cooperation too. Keep playing his role. What are you asking me to do? We want you to work with us. Help us build a case against the entire organization. But it would mean staying in prison or appearing to stay in prison while you help us gather evidence. Witness protection, my lawyer clarified. You'd be relocated under a new identity, working undercover to help the FBI build their case. But as far as the world knows, you'd still be serving time. I thought about Celeste, about the pain in her voice during our last phone call. How long? However long it takes to bring down the network. Could be months, could be longer. And my wife? My life. Agent Morrison's expression softened. I won't lie to you, Mr. Ashford. This choice comes with a cost. You'd have to watch your life continue without you. But it's the only way to ensure justice and clear your name completely. I stared at the case file, at the photos of my partner, shaking hands with criminals, at the evidence of how thoroughly he'd planned my destruction. The choice wasn't really a choice at all. What do I need to do? First, we stage your transfer to a federal facility. Then you disappear into witness protection. And then we start building the case that will bring them all down. As I signed the witness protection agreement, I knew I was trading my present for the possibility of a future. But watching my partner destroy everything I'd built while positioning himself as Celeste's savior, that was a price I couldn't let him get away with paying. My new name was Thomas Mitchell, and I lived in a small apartment in Cleveland, Ohio, far enough from home to ensure I'd never accidentally run into anyone from my old life. The fake identity documents were perfect: driver's license, social security card, even a fabricated work history as an accounting clerk. The FBI had thought of everything. I had a cover job at a small accounting firm where my handler, Agent Rodriguez, worked as my supervisor. To anyone watching, I was just another guy in his late 30s starting over after some unspecified personal troubles. But the hardest part wasn't the new identity or the unfamiliar city. It was the monitoring. Every morning, I checked the news. From home, social media, anything that would give me a glimpse into the life I'd been forced to abandon, that I watched through online articles as my partner gave interviews about rebuilding the company after my betrayal. He spoke with such convincing sadness about how difficult it was to move forward after discovering his friend's crimes. I never suspected anything, he told the local business journal. Gregory was like a brother to me. The betrayal cuts deep. Meanwhile, I was gathering evidence of his real activities. Agent Rodriguez had set me up with sophisticated surveillance equipment hidden in what looked like ordinary accounting software. My job was to track the money, follow the digital breadcrumbs that showed how criminal proceeds were being washed through legitimate business accounts. The network was bigger than we'd initially thought. My partner wasn't just a local criminal. He was connected to operations in 3 states, moving money for drug dealers, arms traffickers, and human smuggling rings. Our consulting business had been the perfect front, with its access to multiple client accounts and legitimate reasons for moving large sums of money. But the most painful surveillance was personal. I'd created fake social media accounts to watch Celeste's life unfold without me. At first, her posts were sad, confused, photos of empty coffee cups with captions like "missing better days." But gradually, the posts changed. My partner started appearing in the background of her photos. First at company events, understandable, since they were working together to save the business. Then at casual dinners, grateful for friends who stick around during tough times. Then at weekend activities, hiking trips, art galleries, wine tastings. 6 months into my new life, I saw the photo that broke my heart. Celeste and my partner at our favorite restaurant, the one where we'd celebrated our biggest contracts. She was smiling, really smiling, for the first time since my arrest. The caption read, "Sometimes the best support comes from unexpected places." "You okay?" Agent Rodriguez asked, finding me staring at my laptop screen in our shared office. "Just processing intel," I lied. "The financial data you've been tracking is paying off. We're starting to see the full scope of their operation. Your partner's been moving about $2 million a month through various accounts." $2 million. No wonder he'd been willing to destroy my life for this opportunity. The money I'd supposedly stolen, $800,000, was pocket change compared to what he was really moving. "How much longer?" I asked. "We're getting close. Maybe another 6 months to build an airtight case. 6 more months of watching Celeste fall in love with the man who destroyed our marriage. 6 more months of being dead to everyone who mattered to me. 6 more months of living as Thomas Mitchell while Gregory Ashford rotted in a prison cell that didn't exist." But as I looked at the evidence we were building, the financial records, the surveillance photos, the recorded conversations, I knew it would be worth it. My partner thought he'd won everything. He had no idea that every dollar he moved, every meeting he attended, every lie he told was being carefully documented. He'd stolen my life, but he was about to learn that some victories come with a price he'd never expected to pay. 8 months into witness protection, Agent Rodriguez walked into our office with an expression I'd never seen before, a mixture of professional duty and personal sympathy. "You need to see this," he said, sliding a legal document across my desk. The header made my stomach drop. "Petition for dissolution of marriage." Celeste was filing for divorce. "I'm sorry, Thomas," Agent Rodriguez said quietly. "I know this isn't easy." I read through the papers with shaking hands. Irreconcilable differences due to criminal behavior and breach of trust. The words cut like knives. She was citing my supposed crimes as grounds for ending our 12-year marriage. "Can I contest this? Can I?" "You're legally dead to the world right now," Agent Rodriguez reminded me gently. "Gregory Ashford is in federal prison. He can't exactly hire a divorce attorney." The divorce decree that followed was a masterpiece of legal manipulation. Since I couldn't defend myself or participate in the proceedings, everything was decided. In my absence, Celeste got the house, her car, and her personal belongings. The business assets were divided between her and my partner, the same partner who had orchestrated this entire situation. But the most painful part wasn't the financial loss. It was reading Celeste's sworn statement to the court. I believed. I knew my husband, but his criminal actions have shown me that our entire marriage was built on deception. I cannot remain married to someone who has betrayed not only my trust, but the trust of our clients and community. My partner had convinced her that everything we'd built together was tainted by my supposed crimes. Every happy memory, every shared dream, every moment of love, all of it poisoned by his lies. The property settlement was particularly cruel. Our house on Maple Street, the one where we'd planned to raise children, was sold to pay restitution for my crimes. Of course, my partner was there to help Celeste through the difficult process of selling our home and starting over. I watched through surveillance photos as she packed up our life. Box after box of memories loaded into a moving truck while my partner stood supportively beside her. He even helped her take down the family photos from our living room walls, photos that included him at company parties and holiday gatherings. "Where's she moving?" I asked Agent Rodriguez. "An apartment downtown." "Your partner helped her find it." "He's been very involved in helping her transition." Very involved. That was one way to put it. Another way was to say he was systematically replacing me in every aspect of her life while I watched helplessly from 300 miles away. The financial records told a story that made my blood boil. The house sold for $450,000, but after legal fees and business debt repayment, Celeste walked away with barely $100,000. My partner, meanwhile, had somehow managed to secure ownership of our client list, our business name, and all our operational assets. He'd structured the divorce settlement to leave Celeste financially dependent on him while making it look like he was generously helping her recover from my betrayal. Every legal document was carefully crafted to funnel money and assets into his control while maintaining the appearance of supporting my victim wife. The good news, Agent Rodriguez said, trying to find a silver lining, is that these financial moves are giving us more evidence of his criminal activity. The way he's manipulating the asset division shows a pattern of fraud that will help our case. But I wasn't thinking about the case anymore. I was thinking about the woman I'd loved for 12 years, now legally free to marry the man who had destroyed our life together. The divorce decree wasn't just a legal document. It was my partner's declaration of victory. He'd taken my business, my reputation, my freedom, and now, officially, my wife. And the most twisted part was that he'd convinced Celeste she was better off without me, that he was her rescuer rather than her destroyer. As I stared at the final page of the divorce decree, with its official court seal and judge's signature, I realized this wasn't just about money or business anymore. It was about a man who had systematically stolen an entire life and convinced his victim to thank him for it. 10 months into my secret life, the FBI operation reached a crucial phase. Agent Rodriguez and I had developed a system for gathering evidence that even impressed the veteran investigators at headquarters. "Look at this," I said, pointing to a series of transactions on my computer screen. Every third Thursday, there's a transfer of exactly $127,000 from the business account to this shell company in Delaware. Pattern recognition. Agent Rodriguez nodded approvingly. That's why we needed someone who understood the business from the inside. The hidden camera footage we'd been collecting was devastating. Using surveillance equipment disguised as everyday office items, we'd captured my partner in dozens of incriminating situations. The tiny camera hidden in a desk lamp had recorded him counting cash payments from known criminals. The device hidden in a coffee mug had caught him discussing money laundering techniques with his contact in the organization. But the most damning footage came from a camera disguised as a wall clock in what used to be my office. My partner had turned the space into his private meeting room, apparently feeling safe discussing criminal business in the place where he'd once worked legitimately. The beauty of it, he said to one of his criminal contacts in a recording that would later be played in court, is that everyone thinks Gregory was the dirty one. I can move money through this business for years without anyone suspecting. What about his wife? The contact asked. She's not a problem. She trusts me completely. Actually, she's become quite dependent on me since her husband's unfortunate situation. Listening to him discuss Celeste like she was just another asset to be managed made my hands clench into fists. But it also gave us exactly what we needed, clear evidence that he was manipulating her as part of his larger scheme. The financial investigation revealed the true scope of his operation. Over the past year, he'd been moving money for 3 different criminal organizations: drug dealers in Detroit, arms traffickers in Miami, and a human smuggling ring operating along the Canadian border. Our consulting business was just one of several legitimate fronts he used to clean their money. The total amount he's laundered is approaching $8 million, Agent Rodriguez told me. Your supposed theft of $800,000 was probably just 1 month's worth of his real criminal income. $8 million. The number was staggering. No wonder he'd been willing to frame me and destroy my marriage to protect this operation. But we were also discovering the personal cost of his crimes. The human smuggling operation he was financing had resulted in dozens of people being trapped in forced labor situations. The arms dealing had put weapons into the hands of gangs terrorizing inner-city communities. His money laundering wasn't just white-collar crime. It was funding human misery on a massive scale. We're ready to move to the next phase, Agent Rodriguez announced during one of our weekly briefings. We want to get him on tape discussing the original plan to frame you. How? You're going to make contact with him directly. We'll set up a situation where he thinks you've escaped from prison and want to cut a deal. The plan was risky but brilliant. Using my Thomas Mitchell identity, I would approach one of his criminal contacts and claim to be Gregory Ashford, escaped convict seeking revenge. The contact would alert my partner, who would hopefully reveal details about the frame-up during the confrontation. He'll either try to kill you or try to buy your silence, Agent Rodriguez explained. Either way, we'll have everything on tape. As we prepared for this final phase of the operation, I couldn't help but think about timing. It had been almost a year since my arrest, and according to our surveillance, my partner was getting comfortable in his new life. He'd taken over the business completely, convinced Celeste of his innocence, and established himself as a pillar of the community. But comfort breeds carelessness. And carelessness was exactly what we needed to bring his entire criminal empire crashing down. The hidden cameras were ready. The recording equipment was tested. The FBI tactical team was standing by. After 18 months of watching my partner live my life while I existed in the shadows, it was finally time to remind him that some debts can never be fully paid. 14 months after my arrest, I was monitoring social media when I saw the post that nearly broke me. Celeste's hand, adorned with a stunning diamond ring, against the backdrop of our old favorite restaurant. The caption was simple: sometimes the best things come from the worst situations. Yes, my partner had proposed. Agent Rodriguez found me staring at the screen, my coffee growing cold beside my keyboard. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I know this is hard." "She looks happy," I managed to say. "She doesn't know the truth yet." But that wasn't what broke my heart. What broke my heart was that she did look genuinely happy, perhaps happier than I'd seen her in the months before my arrest. My partner had timed this perfectly, waiting long enough for her to process the grief of our divorce, but not so long that she might start questioning his version of events. The engagement ring receipt, which we obtained through our financial surveillance, told a more sinister story. The ring cost $45,000 and was purchased with funds from one of the shell accounts he used for money laundering. He'd literally bought her engagement ring with money stolen from criminal activities. "He's proposing to her with blood money," I told Agent Rodriguez. "Drug money, human trafficking money. We'll make sure that evidence is part of the case," he promised. The engagement photos that followed were a masterclass in public relations. My partner had hired a professional photographer to document their love story. There were shots of them at the business we'd built together, him looking protective and successful while she gazed at him with obvious affection. The local newspaper even ran a feature story, "Love After Loss: How Two People Found Hope After Betrayal." The article painted my partner as the loyal friend who'd stood by Celeste through her darkest hour, helping her rebuild both personally and professionally after my crimes had destroyed their lives. "It wasn't easy," he told the reporter. "Gregory's betrayal hurt all of us. But sometimes the most beautiful things grow from the most difficult soil." Reading those words, I felt sick. He was using my supposed crimes as the foundation for a love story, positioning himself as the hero who'd saved Celeste from the villain he'd created. But the engagement also marked a crucial development in our investigation. My partner was getting confident, maybe too confident. He was making public appearances, giving interviews, positioning himself as a pillar of the community. This visibility was exactly what we needed for the final phase of our operation. "He's planning a big wedding," Agent Rodriguez informed me during one of our briefings. "According to our surveillance, he's already put down deposits at the Grand Ballroom downtown, the same venue where Celeste and I had attended our friends' weddings, where we danced and talked about our own future wedding plans back when we were just dating. When, 3 months from now, spring wedding, about 200 guests. He's inviting everyone, business contacts, community leaders, even some of his criminal associates, though they don't know each other's true identities. A public wedding with 200 witnesses. It was perfect, too perfect to resist. My partner would be at his most confident, surrounded by the life he'd stolen, celebrating his complete victory over me. "That's when we take him down," I said. Agent Rodriguez nodded. "The wedding will be the perfect cover for our operation. All his criminal contacts will be in one place, and he'll never suspect anything until it's too late." As I looked at the engagement photos one more time, Celeste radiant with happiness, my partner's arm around her protectively, I realized that his greatest triumph would become his downfall. He'd wanted to publicly claim everything he'd stolen from me, but that public display would be exactly what we needed to expose him. The engagement ring that symbolized his victory was purchased with evidence of his crimes. The wedding that would celebrate his success would become the stage for his arrest. Justice I was learning, has a sense of irony. The wedding planning phase revealed just how thoroughly my partner had taken over my life. Through our surveillance, I watched him and Celeste tour venues, taste wedding cakes, and select flowers. All the intimate activities that should have been ours to share. But more importantly for our investigation, the wedding expenses showed the full extent of his criminal proceeds. The venue alone cost $15,000, paid from an account that had received payments from the Detroit drug operation just weeks earlier. The catering, flowers, photography, and music, all funded by money laundered through our consulting business. "Look at this," Agent Rodriguez said, showing me the wedding venue contract. The grand ballroom, dinner for 200 guests, open bar, live band. This isn't just a wedding. It's a celebration of criminal success. The guest list was a who's who of both legitimate business contacts and criminal associates. My partner had grown so confident in his double life that he was comfortable mixing both worlds at his wedding. Drug dealers would be sitting at tables with city council members. Arms traffickers would be sharing drinks with bank presidents. "He's inviting some very dangerous people," Agent Rodriguez noted, reviewing the surveillance photos of guests arriving for the engagement party. "This gives us an opportunity to gather intelligence on criminal activities beyond just the money laundering." But for me, the most painful part of the wedding planning was watching how happy Celeste seemed. In the surveillance footage from dress shopping, I saw her trying on gowns with her sister, laughing and crying tears of joy. She'd found a beautiful strapless dress that made her look radiant, the kind of dress she dreamed of wearing when we talked about our own wedding plans years ago. "She really loves him," I said to Agent Rodriguez after reviewing the latest surveillance footage. "Or she loves the man she thinks he is," he corrected. "There's a difference." The wedding preparations also revealed my partner's psychological profile. He wasn't just stealing money. He was stealing an entire identity. The wedding flowers were the same type Celeste had admired when we'd attended other weddings together. The menu included dishes from restaurants where we'd celebrated anniversaries. Even the wedding band was playing songs from what had been our playlist. He wasn't just marrying Celeste. He was marrying the life he'd stolen from me, complete, with all the details and preferences he'd observed during our friendship. "It's like he's studied your relationship and recreated it with himself as the leading man," Agent Rodriguez observed. The most chilling discovery came when we intercepted his communications with the wedding planner. He'd specifically requested that the ceremony include a moment of silence for those who couldn't be here to celebrate with us, an apparent reference to me, still supposedly languishing in federal prison. "He's literally going to have a moment of silence for you at his wedding to your ex-wife," Agent Rodriguez said with disgust. "That's a level of psychological manipulation I've rarely seen." But his arrogance was also his weakness. The elaborate wedding, the public celebration, the mixing of criminal and legitimate guests, it was all perfect for our operation. We'd have dozens of FBI agents positioned throughout the venue as caterers, photographers, and wedding guests. Every conversation would be recorded, every criminal contact identified. "Final operational briefing is next week," Agent Rodriguez told me. "Are you ready for this? Ready to watch the woman I'd loved for 12 years marry the man who destroyed our life together? Ready to see my partner claim his final victory over me before I revealed the truth?" "I've been ready for 18 months, I said as I looked at the wedding program preview, Celeste, and partner's name. A new beginning. I realized that he was right about one thing. This would definitely be a new beginning, just not the kind he was expecting. The wedding invitation arrived at my safe house on a Tuesday morning, delivered through a chain of FBI mail forwarding that made it look like it had been sent to Gregory Ashford at federal prison. Agent Rodriguez handed it to me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "He sent this to you in prison," he said quietly. "Either he's completely insane, or this is the ultimate psychological manipulation." The invitation was elegant, cream-colored cardstock with gold lettering. "Celeste Morrison and partner's name. Request the pleasure of your company at their wedding ceremony." My hands shook as I read the details. The same venue where we'd celebrated friends' marriages. The same time of day we'd always said would be perfect for our own wedding. But it was the handwritten note inside that nearly broke me. "Gregory, I know this might seem strange, but Celeste insisted we invite you. She says that despite everything that happened, you were an important part of both our lives for many years. We understand if you can't attend due to your current circumstances, but we wanted you to know you're in our thoughts. We hope you're finding peace and working toward redemption. Your friend, your friend. The man who had systematically destroyed my life, stolen my wife, and built his criminal empire on the ruins of everything I'd worked for was calling himself my friend. This is sick, I said, staring at the invitation. He's inviting me to watch him marry my wife. It's also incredibly arrogant, Agent Rodriguez pointed out. He's so confident in his victory that he's literally rubbing it in your face. But as I studied the invitation more carefully, I realized it was even more calculated than simple cruelty. The note was written in a way that would make me look bitter and vengeful if I ever tried to contest it later. He was positioning himself as the magnanimous victor, graciously extending an olive branch to the friend who had betrayed him. Look at the guest list, Agent Rodriguez said, handing me a surveillance report. He's invited everyone who ever mattered in your old life. Your college friends, former clients, even Celeste's family members who used to consider you a son. Everyone who had once known and respected Gregory Ashford would be there to witness his replacement claim victory. It was a public humiliation, designed to demonstrate that my partner hadn't just taken my place. He'd been accepted by everyone who mattered as the better choice. He wants an audience for his triumph, I realized. This isn't just about marrying Celeste. It's about publicly erasing me and claiming everything I used to be. The emotional impact was devastating. I'd spent 18 months in witness protection, watching my life continue without me, but this felt different. This was my partner forcing me to acknowledge his complete victory, to admit that he'd successfully stolen not just my business and my wife, but my entire identity. I looked at the RSVP card, with its cheerful request to celebrate love and new beginnings. The return address was my old office, the business I'd built, now completely under his control. What do we respond? Agent Rodriguez asked. We don't respond. Gregory Ashford doesn't get mail in federal prison except through official channels. But Thomas Mitchell is going to attend this wedding. Are you sure you can handle watching this? I studied the invitation one more time, imagining Celeste in her wedding dress, promising to love and honor the man who had orchestrated the destruction of her first marriage. I've been handling it for 18 months. One more day won't kill me. But even as I said it, I wondered if that was true. Watching the woman I loved marry my destroyer might not kill me physically, but I wasn't sure what would be left of my heart afterward. Besides, I added, he wanted me there to witness his victory. He should be careful what he wishes for. The morning of the wedding, I stood in my safe house bathroom, adjusting the wire and recording equipment that would capture everything about to unfold. The FBI had provided me with state-of-the-art surveillance gear, a tiny camera built into my lapel pin, audio recording devices sewn into my suit jacket, and a GPS tracker disguised as a watch. Testing audio, Agent Rodriguez said through my earpiece. Can you hear me clearly? Crystal clear. I replied, staring at my reflection in the mirror. Thomas Mitchell looked back at me, a man who'd aged years in 18 months, with lines around his eyes that hadn't been there before and gray hair that had appeared seemingly overnight. Remember, your primary objective is to stay safe and gather evidence. Agent Rodriguez's voice reminded me. We have tactical teams positioned throughout the venue, but you're walking into a room full of dangerous people. The final operational briefing had revealed the scope of what we were dealing with. The wedding guest list included not just my partner's local criminal contacts, but representatives from organized crime families in 3 states. The FBI was treating this as a major intelligence gathering operation. The guest list reads like a criminal who's who, Agent Rodriguez had told me the night before. Drug dealers, arms traffickers, money launderers, and at least 2 people we suspect of murder. Your partner has been more connected than we initially realized. The psychological preparation was almost harder than the technical setup. I was about to watch the woman I'd loved for 12 years marry the man who destroyed our life together. But more than that, I was about to reveal 18 months of deception to everyone who thought they knew the truth about Gregory Ashford. How do I explain being there? I asked. If someone recognizes me? You're Thomas Mitchell, a friend of a friend who was invited last minute. We've created a complete backstory. But honestly, most people will be so shocked to see someone who Looks like Gregory Ashford that they won't think clearly enough to ask detailed questions. The weight of 18 months pressed down on me as I finished getting ready. 18 months of watching my partner live my life, of seeing Celeste fall in love with her destroyer, of building a case that would bring down an entire criminal network. Final equipment check, Agent Rodriguez said. Camera. I touched my lapel pin. Working. Audio. Clear. GPS tracker. I looked at my watch. Active. Backup communication device. I checked the device hidden in my wallet. Ready. Emergency extraction signal. Touch my left ear twice if I need immediate help. Agent Rodriguez's voice softened slightly. I know this isn't easy, Thomas. What you're about to do takes more courage than most people have. I thought about that as I drove toward the grand ballroom. Courage, or was it just the need for justice? For 18 months, I'd watched my partner build his success on the ruins of my life. Today, that ended. The parking lot was already full of expensive cars, the kind of vehicles that drug money and criminal enterprises could buy. I recognized some of the license plates from our surveillance operations. But mixed in with the obvious criminal wealth were the cars of legitimate guests, Celeste's family and friends, our old business contacts, people who genuinely believed. They were celebrating a love story instead of witnessing the finale of an elaborate criminal deception. As I walked toward the venue, my hands started shaking. Not from fear, but from the weight of what was about to happen. After 18 months of being dead to the world, Gregory Ashford was about to come back to life. And when he did, everything my partner had built would come crashing down. I slipped into the back of the grand ballroom just as the processional music began. The venue was decorated exactly as Celeste had always dreamed. White roses and gold accents, candles creating a warm glow throughout the space. It was beautiful, and it broke my heart. The guests were a surreal mixture of my old life and my partner's criminal world. In the third row, I spotted Celeste's sister, dabbing her eyes with a tissue. 2 rows behind her sat a man I recognized from FBI surveillance. Photos, a drug dealer from Detroit who'd laundered money through our business. The contrast was jarring. Then the music changed, and everyone stood as Celeste appeared at the back of the aisle. My breath caught in my throat. She was radiant in a strapless white gown, her dark hair swept up elegantly, carrying a bouquet of white roses. She looked exactly as I'd always imagined she would on her wedding day. Except she was walking toward another man. An MY partner stood at the altar in a perfectly tailored tuxedo, his face beaming with what looked like genuine happiness. For a moment, I almost questioned everything. Could someone who looked so genuinely joyful really be the monster I knew him to be? But then I noticed details that the other guests couldn't see. The slight bulge in his jacket that suggested a concealed weapon. The way his eyes scanned the crowd, not with the joy of a groom, but with the wariness of a criminal checking for threats. The subtle hand signals he exchanged with certain guests, communications that had nothing to do with wedding celebration. He's nervous, Agent Rodriguez's voice whispered in my earpiece. Our surveillance shows elevated stress levels. As Celeste walked down the aisle, I found myself studying her face. She was smiling, but there was something in her expression I couldn't quite identify. Sadness? Uncertainty? Or was I just projecting my own feelings onto her happiness? The wedding program in my hands felt surreal. Celeste and partner's name. A new beginning. Inside, there was a dedication. In loving memory of those who helped shape our journey but couldn't be here to celebrate with us. A not-so-subtle reference to me, supposedly rotting in federal prison. Dearly beloved, the minister began. We are gathered here today to witness the union of 2 people who found love in the midst of life's greatest challenges. Life's greatest challenges. My supposed criminal betrayal had become part of their love story, the adversity that had brought them together. I watched my partner nod solemnly, playing the role of the loyal friend who'd stood by his partner's betrayed wife. Do you have the rings? The minister asked that MY partner's best man, another face from our criminal surveillance files, stepped forward with the rings. The same engagement ring purchased with laundered drug money, now joined by matching wedding bands that had probably been bought the same way. As the ceremony progressed, I noticed the criminal guests becoming increasingly comfortable. They were drinking, laughing, treating this like any other social gathering. They had no idea they were being recorded by dozens of FBI surveillance devices. The readings today speak of love conquering adversity, The minister continued, of two people who refused to let betrayal and loss define their future. Betrayal and loss. They were talking about me as if I were dead, which, in legal terms, I supposed I was. Gregory Ashford was officially a convicted felon serving time in federal prison. Only Thomas Mitchell existed now, standing in the back of this church, watching his life being celebrated as a cautionary tale. If there is anyone who knows of any reason why these two should not be wed, the minister said, his voice carrying clearly through the ballroom, speak now or forever hold your peace. The traditional words hung in the air. This was the moment, the perfect dramatic opportunity that my partner had probably never imagined would actually matter. Through my earpiece, Agent Rodriguez's voice was urgent. Are you ready for this? I looked at Celeste, beautiful and hopeful. At the altar, I looked at my partner, confident in his complete victory. I looked at the room full of criminals and innocent people, all witnessing what they thought was a celebration of love, but was actually the finale of an elaborate con game. Gregory Ashford is about to speak. I whispered into my hidden microphone. The moment of truth had arrived. I slipped into the back of the grand ballroom, just as the processional music began. The venue was decorated exactly as Celeste had always dreamed. White roses and gold accents, candles creating a warm glow throughout the space. It was beautiful, and it broke my heart. The guests were a surreal mixture of my old life and my partner's criminal world. In the third row, I spotted Celeste's sister, dabbing her eyes with a tissue. 2 rows behind her sat a man I recognized from FBI surveillance photos, a drug dealer from Detroit who'd laundered money through our business. The contrast was jarring. Then the music changed, and everyone stood as Celeste appeared at the back of the aisle. My breath caught in my throat. She was radiant in a strapless white gown, her dark hair swept up elegantly, carrying a bouquet of white roses. She looked exactly as I'd always imagined she would on her wedding day. Except she was walking toward another man. An MY partner stood at the altar in a perfectly tailored tuxedo, his face beaming with what looked like genuine happiness. For a moment, I almost questioned everything. Could someone who looked so genuinely joyful really be the monster I knew him to be? But then I noticed details that the other guests couldn't see. The slight bulge in his jacket that suggested a concealed weapon. The way his eyes scanned the crowd, not with the joy of a groom, but with the wariness of a criminal checking for threats. The subtle hand signals he exchanged with certain guests, communications that had nothing to do with wedding celebration. He's nervous, Agent Rodriguez's voice whispered in my earpiece. Our surveillance shows elevated stress levels. As Celeste walked down the aisle, I found myself studying her face. She was smiling, but there was something in her expression I couldn't quite identify. Sadness? Uncertainty? Or was I just projecting my own feelings onto her happiness? The wedding program in my hands felt surreal. Celeste and partner's name. A new beginning. Inside, there was a dedication. In loving memory of those who helped shape our journey but couldn't be here to celebrate with us. A not-so-subtle reference to me, supposedly rotting in federal prison. Dearly beloved, the minister began. We are gathered here today to witness the union of 2 people who found love in the midst of life's greatest challenges. Life's greatest challenges. My supposed criminal betrayal had become part of their love story, the adversity that had brought them together. I watched my partner nod solemnly, playing the role of the loyal friend who'd stood by his partner's betrayed wife. Do you have the rings? The minister asked that MY partner's best man, another face from our criminal surveillance files, stepped forward with the rings. The same engagement ring purchased with laundered drug money, now joined by matching wedding bands that had probably been bought the same way. As the ceremony progressed, I noticed the criminal guests becoming increasingly comfortable. They were drinking, laughing, treating this like any other social gathering. They had no idea they were being recorded by dozens of FBI surveillance devices. The readings today speak of love conquering adversity. The minister continued, of 2 people who refused to let betrayal and loss define their future. Betrayal and loss. They were talking about me as if I were dead, which, in legal terms, I supposed I was. Gregory Ashford was officially a convicted felon serving time in federal prison. Only Thomas Mitchell existed now, standing in the back of this church, watching his life being celebrated as a cautionary tale. If there is anyone who knows of any reason why these two should not be wed, the minister said, his voice carrying clearly through the ballroom, speak now or forever hold your peace. The traditional words hung in the air. This was the moment, the perfect dramatic opportunity that my partner had probably never imagined would actually matter. Through my earpiece, Agent Rodriguez's voice was urgent. Are you ready for this? I looked at Celeste, beautiful and hopeful. At the altar, I looked at my partner, confident in his complete victory. I looked at the room full of criminals and innocent people, all witnessing what they thought was a celebration of love, but was actually the finale of an elaborate con game. Gregory Ashford is about to speak. I whispered into my hidden microphone. The moment of truth had arrived. The FBI tactical team was efficient and thorough. Within minutes, they had secured the ballroom and separated the guests into different groups. Innocent wedding attendees in one area, suspected criminals in another, and key witnesses in a third. Section near the altar. Agent Rodriguez approached with an official FBI arrest warrant, the document that had been 18 months in the making. Ladies and gentlemen, this operation has resulted in the arrest of 12 individuals connected to a multi-state criminal organization involved in money laundering, drug trafficking, and human smuggling. The wedding guests who weren't being arrested sat in stunned silence. Celeste's sister was crying, not from joy anymore, but from shock and confusion. Several of our old business clients were demanding explanations, unable to process that the man they'd trusted to rebuild after my betrayal was actually the architect of the original crime. The defendant used his position as a business partner to systematically frame Gregory Ashford for crimes he didn't commit. Agent Rodriguez continued, reading from the arrest warrant. He then used Mr. Ashford's supposed criminal conviction to gain control of their business and use it as a front for money laundering operations. I watched the faces in the crowd as the full scope of the deception became clear. These people had spent 18 months believing I was a criminal who had betrayed everyone who trusted me. They'd supported Celeste through her divorce, celebrated her finding love again, and come here today to witness what they thought was a beautiful second-chance romance. The evidence includes 18 months of surveillance footage, recorded conversations, financial records showing the movement of over $8 million in criminal proceeds, and documentation of the defendant's connections to organized crime figures in 3 states. $8 million. The number caused another wave of gasps through the crowd. The scale of the operation was far beyond what anyone had imagined. Celeste finally spoke, her voice shaky but growing stronger. All those times you comforted me about Gregory's betrayal were calculated manipulation, Agent Rodriguez confirmed. Mr. Ashford has been working undercover with the FBI since 4 months. After his arrest, when we determined he had been framed. Everything that's happened since then, the divorce, the business takeover, this engagement, was orchestrated by a man who saw an opportunity to steal an entire life. The wedding venue, which had been decorated for celebration, now looked like a crime scene. FBI agents were photographing evidence, interviewing guests, and processing the arrests. The white roses and gold accents that had seemed so romantic an hour ago now seemed like props in an elaborate theatrical production. What about the evidence against Gregory? Asked one of our former clients, an elderly man who had trusted us. With his company's restructuring, the signatures, the bank records, all forged using sophisticated techniques, Agent Rodriguez explained. The defendant had connections to a criminal organization that specialized in document forgery and identity theft. They created false evidence so convincing that even forensic analysis initially supported it. But the security footage of Gregory at the bank, digitally manipulated. We have the original footage, which shows the defendant making the deposits, while wearing a disguise designed to make him appear to be Mr. Ashford. The level of planning and sophistication was staggering. My partner hadn't just decided to steal money. He'd orchestrated an elaborate long-term plan to steal my entire identity and life. The engagement ring, I said to Celeste, was purchased with money from a drug trafficking operation. The wedding expenses, the venue, everything. It was all paid for with criminal proceeds. She looked down at the diamond on her finger as if it had become poisonous. I don't understand how I didn't see it. How did I not know? Because he's a professional, Agent Rodriguez said gently. This wasn't his first identity theft. just his most ambitious. He saw an opportunity to take over a successful business and a successful life, and he had the criminal resources to make it happen. The minister, who had been standing frozen near the altar this entire time, finally found his voice. In 30 years of performing weddings, I've never. This is unprecedented. The criminal organization he was working with specializes in long-term identity fraud, Agent Rodriguez continued. They've done this before, but usually on a smaller scale. This was their attempt to take over an entire legitimate business and use it as a permanent front for money laundering. As the FBI agents led away the last of the arrested criminals, the ballroom began to empty. Wedding guests filed out in confusion and shock, many of them still trying to process what they'd witnessed. But Celeste remained at the altar, still in her wedding dress, still holding her bouquet of roses that had been paid for with drug money. 18 months, she said again, looking at me with a mixture of emotions I couldn't fully read. You were alive for 18 months. I was dead for 18 months, I corrected gently. Gregory Ashford was supposed to be in prison. Thomas Mitchell was alive, but he was a different person, living a different life, working to build a case that would bring justice for both of us. The truth was finally out. The man who had stolen our life together was in handcuffs. The criminal organization was being dismantled. But as I looked at Celeste in her wedding dress, I realized that justice and reconciliation were two very different things. After the FBI finished processing the scene and the last of the guests had left, Celeste and I found ourselves alone in the ballroom that had been decorated for her wedding to another man. She was still wearing her white dress, though she'd removed her veil and was holding it in trembling hands. I need to understand, she said, her voice quiet but firm. 18 months, Gregory. 18 months of thinking you had betrayed me, destroyed our business, stolen from our clients. 18 months of grieving our marriage and trying to rebuild my life. I sat down heavily in one of the chairs that had been arranged for wedding guests. I know. I watched it all happen. You watched it happen? Her voice rose. You watched me cry myself to sleep for months? You watched me struggle to pay bills because the business was collapsing? You watched me fall in love with the man who was destroying us, and you said nothing? The pain in her voice cut through me. I couldn't say anything. If I'd broken cover, he would have disappeared and taken his entire criminal network with him. Dozens of other victims would never have gotten justice. What about my justice? What about my right to know that my husband was alive? I pulled out a folder that Agent Rodriguez had given me, copies of the stolen money evidence that would be used in court. Look at these bank records, Celeste. He stole over $8 million from criminal organizations and used our business to launder it. But that's not the worst part. She took the folder with shaking hands, scanning the financial documents. I don't understand what I'm looking at. The money he was laundering came from human trafficking, drug sales that destroyed families, arms dealing that put weapons in the hands of people who killed innocent victims. I paused, letting that sink in. If I'd revealed myself early and he'd escaped, all of that would have continued. But our marriage was already destroyed the moment he decided to frame me. Everything that happened after that was just him playing out his plan. She found the engagement ring receipt in the folder, the one showing the purchase, made with laundered drug money. Her face went pale. He bought my ring with money from drug dealers and human traffickers. The wedding venue, the flowers, the dress you're wearing. It was all paid for with money stolen from criminal activities that hurt innocent people. Celeste sank into a chair, still holding the financial documents. I feel so stupid. How did I not see it? Because he's a professional manipulator, and you're a good person who wanted to believe the best about someone who was helping you through the worst time of your life. But I loved him, she said, tears starting to flow. Not at first. At first he was just being supportive. But over time, I really fell in love with him. That admission hit me harder than I'd expected. I know. I watched it happen. How could you watch me fall in love with another man and not feel destroyed? Heartbroken, like my chest was being ripped open every single day. I stood up, emotion finally breaking through. I felt all of that, Celeste. Every photo you posted, every smile you shared with him, every moment of happiness you found. It killed me. Then why didn't you find a way to tell me? I showed her more documents from the folder, surveillance photos of her with my partner, records of their conversations, evidence of how carefully he'd manipulated every aspect of their relationship. Because he was using you as bait. Look at these surveillance reports. He knew the FBI was investigating money laundering in the area. He positioned you as his connection to legitimacy, his proof that he was just an innocent businessman trying to rebuild after his partner's betrayal. She studied the surveillance photos with growing horror. He was using me. Every public appearance, every social media post, every time he introduced you as his fiancée to potential business partners, you were his shield against suspicion. The business meetings where he brought me along, those weren't clients. At least half of them were criminals he was laundering money for. You were there to make the meetings look legitimate. Celeste was quiet for a long moment, processing the depth of the manipulation. So our relationship, our love, none of it was real. I don't know, I said honestly. Maybe he did develop feelings for you. But those feelings were built on a foundation of lies and criminal manipulation. She looked down at her engagement ring again, then slowly pulled it off her finger. I can't wear this anymore. The FBI will need it as evidence anyway. What happens now? To us, I mean. I sat back down, suddenly feeling exhausted. I don't know, Celeste. We can't go back to who we were 18 months ago. Too much has happened. Do you hate me? For falling in love with him. I hate that he put you in that position. I hate that he used your pain and vulnerability to manipulate you. But hate you? Never. I signed divorce papers. I told the court that you had betrayed me, that our marriage was built on lies. Our marriage was built on 12 years of real love. His frame-up doesn't change that history. She was quiet for a moment, looking around the ballroom that had been decorated for a wedding that would never be completed. I don't know how to process any of this. Neither do I admitted. But we don't have to figure it out today. As we sat in the empty ballroom, surrounded by the remnants of a celebration that had turned into a federal crime scene, I realized that catching the criminal was only the beginning. The harder work, rebuilding trust, processing betrayal, figuring out if love could survive this level of deception, that work was just starting. 6 months later, I sat in the federal courthouse watching my former partner receive his sentence. The trial had been thorough and devastating. 18 months of evidence presented in methodical detail that painted a picture of one of the most sophisticated identity theft and money laundering operations the FBI had ever uncovered. The court conviction record would show the final tally: conspiracy to commit fraud, money laundering, identity theft, obstruction of justice, and connection to organized crime activities. The judge sentenced him to 25 years in federal prison with no possibility of parole for 15 years. The defendant's crimes went far beyond financial fraud, Judge Harrison said from the bench. He systematically destroyed an innocent man's life and reputation, manipulated a grieving woman's emotions, and used their legitimate business to facilitate crimes that caused immeasurable harm to countless victims. My partner, I still had trouble thinking of him by name, showed no emotion as the sentence was read. He'd maintained his innocence throughout the trial, claiming he was being framed by a conspiracy between me and the FBI. The jury had deliberated for less than 4 hours. Agent Rodriguez, who had become something closer to a friend over the past 2 years, sat beside me in the courtroom. How does it feel? He asked quietly. Like justice, I said. Finally, the criminal network he'd been part of had been completely dismantled. 12 other people were serving sentences ranging from 5 to 15 years. The drug trafficking operation had been shut down, the human smuggling ring broken up, and the arms dealing connection severed. But more importantly for me, my name had been officially cleared. The court record now showed that Gregory Ashford had been the victim of an elaborate frame-up, not a criminal. Every document that had been used to convict me had been proven false, every signature shown to be forged, every piece of evidence demonstrated to be manufactured. The financial recovery had been substantial. The FBI had seized over $12 million in assets connected to the criminal operation, money that was being returned to victims and legitimate businesses that had been defrauded. I was getting back not just the $800,000 I'd supposedly stolen, but additional damages for the destruction of my business and reputation. Mr. Ashford, the prosecutor said, approaching me after the sentencing was complete, I want to personally apologize for what you went through. The justice system failed you initially, but I hope today's verdict helps restore some faith in the process. The justice system didn't fail me. I replied. A criminal with sophisticated resources temporarily fooled it. But eventually, the truth came out. As we left the courthouse, I thought about the victims who couldn't be there to see justice served. The people who had been trafficked by the organization my partner helped fund. The families destroyed by the drugs his money laundering had facilitated. The communities terrorized by weapons his criminal network had supplied. An stolen life was just one crime among many. But it was the crime that had brought the entire operation down. What's next for you? Agent Rodriguez asked as we stood on the courthouse steps. Rebuilding, I said, starting over, but this time with a clear name and a clean slate. The business we'd built together was gone, destroyed by scandal and criminal association. But I had the skills, the contacts, and now the vindication to start fresh. Several of our former clients had already reached out, apologizing for doubting me and expressing interest in working together again. And Celeste, that was the complicated question. We'd been in counseling together for the past 4 months, trying to work through the trauma and betrayal we'd both experienced. It wasn't easy. Trust, once broken, took time to rebuild, especially when the betrayal had been so complete and so sophisticated. We're taking it slowly, I said. We're not the same people we were 2 years ago. Maybe that's not entirely a bad thing. The legal vindication was complete, but the personal healing was still ongoing. Celeste was dealing with her own trauma, the realization that she'd been manipulated and used, that her emotions had been weaponized against her. We were both learning to trust again, starting with learning to trust ourselves. The good news, Agent Rodriguez said, is that you're both survivors. You've been through hell, but you came out the other side. As I walked away from the courthouse, I felt something I hadn't experienced in 2 years, hope. Not just hope for justice that had been achieved, but hope for the future. Hope that love could survive betrayal, that trust could be rebuilt, that good people could overcome even the most sophisticated evil. My partner had stolen 24 months of my life, but he couldn't steal the rest of it. That was still mine to right. 1 year after the trial, I stood in the office of my new consulting firm, looking out at the city skyline and reflecting on how much had changed. The new business license hanging on my wall read, Ashford Solutions, not Ashford and Associates. This time, I was flying solo, at least for now. The office was smaller than what Celeste and I had built together, but it was honest. Every client, every contract, every dollar earned was clean. No criminal money, no hidden agendas, no partners with secret criminal connections. Just legitimate business helping legitimate companies solve real problems. Your 3 o'clock is here. My assistant called from the outer office. It was Celeste, carrying coffee and what looked like legal documents. How's the new office treating you? She asked, settling into the chair across from my desk. Like a fresh start, I said, which is exactly what I needed. Our relationship had evolved into something neither of us had expected. Not quite a reconciliation, not quite a separation, but something new. We were dating again, if you could call it that. Taking things slowly, rediscovering who we were as individuals before figuring out who we might be together. I brought the insurance settlement papers, she said, sliding the documents across my desk. The company that insured our old business is paying out for the damages caused by criminal activity. Another piece of financial recovery. Between the FBI asset seizures, insurance settlements, and new client contracts, I was rebuilding not just my reputation, but my financial stability. Any word on the victim compensation fund? I asked. The families affected by the trafficking operation are getting help, and the communities damaged by the drug operations are receiving federal assistance for treatment programs. It's not enough to undo the harm, but it's something. That mattered to me more than my own financial recovery. Knowing that some good was coming from the destruction of that criminal network helped justify the 2 years of hell we'd all endured. I've been thinking about what Agent Rodriguez said at the sentencing, Celeste said, about how we're both survivors. What about it? I think he was right, but I think he was also incomplete. We're not just survivors. We're people who refused to let evil win. I looked at her across my desk, this woman I'd loved for 12 years, lost for 2 years, and was slowly learning to love again in a completely different way. She was right. We could have let the betrayal destroy us completely. We could have let the criminal manipulation turn us against each other permanently. Your partner, our partner, he thought he was so smart, she continued. He thought he could steal a life, manipulate emotions, and build his success on other people's destruction. But he underestimated something. What's that? The power of people who refuse to stay victims. She was right. The man who had tried to destroy us was spending 25 years in federal prison, while we were sitting in my new office, discussing insurance settlements and victim compensation, rebuilding our lives on honest foundations. I have something else, she said, pulling out a small envelope. A letter from one of the trafficking victims who was rescued when they shut down the network. I read the handwritten note from a young woman whose name I couldn't pronounce, thanking the people who had helped bring down the organization that had enslaved her. She was in college now, studying social work, planning to help other victims. She doesn't know our names, Celeste said, but she knows that someone refused to let criminals win. Someone fought back. We sat quietly for a moment, both understanding that justice was bigger than our personal story. Our stolen life, our destroyed marriage, our 2 years of hell. All of it had meaning because it led to something larger than ourselves. So what's next? Celeste asked. I don't know, I said honestly. For the first time in 3 years, I'm not planning for disaster or building criminal cases or trying to recover from betrayal. I'm just building a business and figuring out what happiness looks like after trauma. I like the sound of that. As she gathered her papers to leave, I realized something profound had shifted. The man who had stolen our life had given us something he never intended. The knowledge that we were stronger than we'd ever known, individually and together. Dinner tonight? I asked. Your place or mine? How about somewhere new? Start a new tradition. She smiled, the first completely unguarded smile I'd seen from her since before this nightmare began. I'd like that. After she left, I turned back to the window overlooking the city. Somewhere out there, Agent Rodriguez was working new cases, protecting other victims from criminal manipulation. Somewhere out there, families were healing from the trauma caused by the network we'd helped destroy. Somewhere out there, people were building honest lives on honest foundations. And somewhere, in a federal prison, the man who thought he could steal an entire life was learning that some victories come with a price he'd never expected to pay. Justice, I'd learned, isn't just about punishment. It's about good people refusing to let evil define their story. Our story was just beginning.